"Don't tell them who I am," she begged. The cowboy saw the Apache girl hiding as a soldier. The sun was a blazing ball of fire in the sky, making the dry plains shimmer with heat. The wind carried dust across the land, swirling it around rocks and cactus like invisible dancers. Eli, a tall cowboy with sun-creased skin and worn leather boots, rode steadily along a narrow canyon trail. His horse, a strong chestnut with a white blaze across its face, moved carefully over the rough stones, its hooves crunching softly. Eli had been traveling this path for hours, the silence of the canyon broken only by the occasional call of a distant bird. He had ridden many miles that day, chasing a herd of cattle, but something about this canyon felt different. As he rounded a bend, Eli noticed movement near the edge of a cliff. At first he thought it was just a trick of the sunlight on the rocks, but then he saw it clearly, a figure crouching behind a boulder, wearing the uniform of a soldier. The figure moved with caution, almost like a fox hiding from hunters. Eli's curiosity pulled him closer, but he stayed at a distance. Something about the way the figure moved was not quite right. Soldiers he had seen before marched boldly, never hiding. This one was careful, cautious, tense. The figure's head turned toward him, and Eli caught a glimpse of a face partially covered by a wide-brimmed hat. Her eyes were dark, sharp, and alert. They studied him as if measuring his intentions. For a moment, Eli wondered if he should ride on, ignore her. But something in her gaze stopped him. There was fear there, but also determination. A quiet strength that made him sit taller in his saddle. "Hey there," Eli called softly, not wanting to startle her. "You all right?" The figure flinched but did not run. She shifted her weight, revealing a small, tense frame. She raised one hand in a subtle wave and said quietly, "Please, don't tell them who I am." Her voice was calm, but there was urgency in it, like someone who had kept a dangerous secret for too long. Eli blinked, taken aback. He had seen many things on the frontier, but this was new. A soldier asking not to be recognized? It made little sense. Still, he felt a strange instinct to protect her. He nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Your secret's safe with me, but you're going to have to explain." The girl hesitated, then stepped closer, her uniform slightly loose, revealing that she was not quite built like the men who wore similar clothes. Her hands were small but steady, gripping the edges of her coat as if it were both a shield and a disguise. "I don't have much time," she whispered. "If anyone finds out who I really am, it could mean death." "I'm not really a soldier." Eli's eyes narrowed. "Then what are you?" he asked gently. He did not press too hard. The fear in her voice told him she had already endured too much. She looked away for a moment, scanning the canyon as if to make sure they were alone. Then, almost in a rush, she spoke. "My name is Nayeli. I am Apache. I am Apache. I came here disguised as a soldier to keep my people safe. I had no choice." Eli swallowed hard. The Apache people were known for their courage, their skill in surviving the harsh lands. And yet, here was one of their own, hiding among soldiers, carrying a secret that could change everything. "You've been pretending all this time?" he asked. "That's dangerous."
Why would you do something like that? Nayeli's eyes glimmered in the harsh sunlight. "Because I had to," she said simply.
"Some men are planning to attack my village. I joined a scouting party, pretending to be one of them, so I could learn what they were planning and stop them. If I fail, they will come for my family." Her voice broke slightly, but she held herself upright, showing a bravery beyond her years. Eli felt a mixture of admiration and worry. He had faced danger many times in his life, but nothing like this. He had never met someone so young, so brave, willing to risk everything for others. You've got guts, he said, but this is risky, really risky. If anyone finds out, there's no telling what could happen. Naeli nodded, a small frown on her face. I know, she said. That's why I need someone to trust. I can't do this alone. Please, don't tell anyone, not even your friends. I have no one else. Eli's mind raced. He had seen violence in these lands, men who would not hesitate to shoot without thought, but he had also seen courage, the kind that changed lives quietly, without recognition. And here was courage in its purest form, disguised in a soldier's uniform, hiding in plain sight. He could not turn away. All right, he said finally. I won't tell anyone. But you need to be careful. One wrong move, and it could cost you everything. For a moment, they both sat in silence, the wind whistling softly through the canyon. Eli watched her closely, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tapped nervously against her coat. She was young, but her determination was evident. She was not just hiding. She was preparing, thinking, planning. Ah, ah, ah. He felt a strange connection with her, as if fate had placed them on the same path for a reason. Why me? He asked quietly. Why did you trust me? Naeli looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his. You look different, she said simply. You don't seem like the others. You ride alone. You watch before you act. I thought maybe you could understand. Eli smiled faintly. He had spent many years alone on the frontier, riding through deserts and canyons, learning to read the land and the people in it. Most were too busy chasing wealth or fighting for power to notice the quiet struggles around them. But he understood bravery when he saw it. And this girl, hiding in plain sight, carried more courage than many men he had met in his lifetime. All right, he said finally. I understand. I'll help.
For now, we need to get you somewhere safe. Let's find a spot where no one will see you.
Naeli's lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. Relief softened her features, and for a moment, the weight of her secret seemed lighter. She followed Eli as he led his horse down a narrow path, careful not to disturb the rocks or make noise. The canyon was a maze of cliffs and shadows, perfect for hiding, and Eli knew a few spots where they could rest without being seen. As they moved deeper into the canyon, Eli could not help but notice the determination in her every step. She moved as if she belonged there, even though she carried a heavy burden. He wondered about her life, about the village she had left behind, and about the danger that loomed over her people. Yet in her eyes, he saw hope. Hope that someone could stand up to fear and make a difference. By the time they reached a secluded alcove hidden behind large boulders and thick brush, the sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon. Shadows stretched across the canyon and the air cooled slightly. Eli helped Naeli settle behind the rocks, giving her water from his canteen and a piece of bread he had packed. She ate quickly, her eyes darting toward the canyon's mouth, always alert. You'll be safe here for a while, Eli said. No one should find you, not if we're careful. But we need to plan your next move. You can't stay hidden forever. Naeli nodded, her expression serious. I know, she said. I need to know what they're planning, where they're going. Then I can stop them. I can't fail. Eli looked at her, seeing both the fear and the courage that lived side by side in her heart. We'll figure it out, he said. Together. For the first time that day, Naeli allowed herself to relax just a little. The sun dipped lower, painting the canyon walls in deep reds and golds, and for a moment The world seemed calm, even safe. But Eli knew the peace was temporary. Danger was never far in these lands, and the path ahead would be difficult. Still, in that moment, as the wind whispered through the canyon and the shadows danced across the rocks, two strangers, a cowboy and an Apache girl disguised as a soldier, sat together in silence. One secret shared, one promise made, and the knowledge that the journey ahead would test them in ways neither could imagine. Eli did not know how it would end, and Nayeli did not know if she would succeed. But they both knew this. Courage was not about fearlessness. It was about standing firm in the face of danger. And in that canyon, surrounded by dust and silence, courage had found its unlikely home. The night settled over the canyon like a heavy blanket, cooling the sun-scorched rocks and bringing with it a quiet that felt almost sacred. Eli and Nayeli remained hidden behind the large boulders, their small fire flickering, casting dancing shadows across the jagged walls. The flames painted their faces in warm, golden light, highlighting the determination in Nayeli's dark eyes and the weathered lines on Eli's face. Eli handed her a canteen of water. She drank slowly, careful not to spill a drop, her gaze fixed on the canyon's narrow entrance. Even in this moment of relative safety, she remained vigilant. "You can relax a little," Eli said gently. "No one's coming near us right now. The canyon keeps people away." "I know," Nayeli replied, her voice soft but tense. "But I can't afford mistakes. If anyone suspects I am not who I appear to be, if even one person notices, they will come after me. My family, everyone I care about. I can't risk them." Her hands clutched her coat tightly, as though holding it close could somehow protect them all. Eli studied her quietly. He had seen fear many times, but this was different. This was fear tempered with courage, fear wrapped in purpose. "I get it," he said finally. "But you don't have to carry it alone. That's why I'm here. We'll figure out a way to keep them from harming your village." Nayeli nodded, but her eyes did not waver from the canyon entrance. "It's not just about keeping them away," she whispered. "I need to understand what they're planning, where they're going, how many are involved. Only then can I stop them." Eli leaned back against the boulder, feeling the rough stone press against his back. The fire crackled, sending a small plume of smoke curling into the night air. "So, you've been spying on them," he said. "That's dangerous work. You've been walking among people who would kill without a second thought, pretending to be one of them."
How long have you been doing this? Since last month, she replied. I joined a scouting party disguised as a soldier.
"They think I'm just another recruit. They have no idea I'm watching them, learning their movements, their plans. Every day I risk being discovered. Every day is a choice between staying hidden or helping my people." She paused, her voice faltering slightly. "Some nights I think, maybe I'm too young for this. But then I remember what's at stake, and I know I have to keep going." Eli was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. He had faced danger on many occasions, riding through deserts, defending herds, and standing up to thieves. But he had never met someone so young, so determined, willing to face death not for themselves, but for others. "You're braver than most men I've met," he said softly. Nayeli's eyes flickered toward him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Bravery doesn't mean you aren't scared," she said. "It just means you do what needs to be done even when you are." The words struck Eli. He thought about his life, the long days in the sun, the nights under the stars, and the countless moments when fear had whispered in his ear. And he realized that courage was exactly as she had said, not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the canyon's natural sounds. The distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the faint clatter of rocks rolling down the cliffs far above. The world seemed peaceful, but Eli knew better. Danger was always near in these lands, and it would not wait for them to feel safe. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me more about your village," he said. "Where do you live? How many people are there? Maybe I can help you plan a way to protect them." Nayeli's eyes softened as she spoke of her home. "It's in the mountains beyond the canyon, not far but hard to reach by outsiders. There are maybe 100 people, families mostly. They are strong and wise, but not trained for battle like soldiers. That's why I have to watch them. I have to protect them from those who would harm them." Her voice carried pride, but also worry. "If I fail,
They'll have no one else." Eli nodded.
he could see her heart in her words. Her people were counting on her, and she had taken a burden that no one should carry alone. "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," he said, his voice firm. "You have me now. We'll find a way to stop them." Nayeli studied him for a moment, her expression a mix of relief and caution. "I hope so," she said. "I've been careful, but I can't stay hidden forever. Eventually, I'll have to act, and I don't know if I'm ready for that yet." "You're more ready than you think," Eli said. "You've survived this long, haven't you?" "Every day you've stayed one step ahead. That takes skill and courage. You have what it takes." She looked down at her hands, her fingers brushing against the leather of her coat. "I hope you're right," she whispered. "I hope I can do what's needed." The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the rocks around them. Eli could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her jaw, and he knew that beneath her calm words her mind was racing. She had planned every step, every move, but the fear of being discovered was never far away. Eli decided to share a story of his own, hoping to ease her mind. "When I was younger, I rode across these plains alone for months," he began. "I had no one to rely on but myself and my horse. I was scared more times than I can count. But every day I kept going, learned from mistakes, and found ways to survive. You can do the same, Nayeli. Not alone, but with someone who understands." Her eyes met his again, and a small spark of hope shone in them.
"I'll try," she said softly. "I want to be strong enough to protect them."
"I don't want to hide forever. I want to fight in my own way, even if it's dangerous." Eli smiled faintly. "That's all anyone can ask for. And remember, you don't have to do it alone anymore. I'll ride with you, help you plan, and watch your back." The night deepened, the fire burning lower, leaving only glowing embers. They spoke quietly for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. Nayeli spoke of growing up in the mountains, learning the ways of her people, the traditions, and the stories passed down through generations. Eli spoke of the plains, of cattle drives, of dusty towns where the law was often just a suggestion. Despite their different lives, they found common ground in courage, survival, and the desire to protect those they cared for. By the time the fire burned out, the stars were shining brightly above, scattered across the sky like diamonds. The canyon was silent, holding them in its embrace, a world apart from the dangers that lurked beyond its walls. Eli looked at Nayeli and saw not a frightened girl, but a warrior in her own right, disguised in the uniform of another, carrying the weight of her people on her young shoulders. "You should rest now," Eli said. "We have a long day ahead. We need a plan to learn what the soldiers are doing and to find a way to stop them before they hurt anyone." Nayeli nodded, settling against the cool stone, her eyes finally closing for a few moments. Sleep came reluctantly, her mind still alert. But for the first time since she had arrived in the canyon, she felt a small measure of safety. Eli kept watch, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife, eyes scanning the shadows. He knew the night was only a pause in the storm to come, but he also knew that together they had a chance. And in that moment, two lives, so different yet so connected, found a quiet understanding, one secret shared, one promise made, and the courage to face what lay ahead. The night held them in its stillness, but the dawn would bring movement, plans, and the first steps of a dangerous mission that could change everything. The fire of determination burned brighter than any fear, and as the canyon whispered around them, Eli and Nayeli knew that their journey had only just begun. The morning sun rose slowly over the canyon, turning the rocks a soft gold and painting long shadows across the dusty ground. Eli stirred first, shaking off the sleep that had been light and uneasy for both of them. Nayeli had been awake much of the night, listening to the sounds of the canyon, imagining every possible danger. When she finally opened her eyes, Eli was already checking their small fire pit, making sure they had left no trace of their camp behind. "We need to move," Eli said quietly. "The longer we stay, the greater the chance someone finds us. And you said there's a group planning to attack your village."
We have to figure out what they're doing. Nayeli nodded, her dark eyes scanning the cliffs around them.
"I know the terrain better than they do," she said. "If we move carefully, we can stay hidden and follow them without being seen." She shifted slightly, adjusting the soldier's uniform to blend in more with the landscape. "We have to be quick but smart. One mistake and everything could be lost." Eli admired her determination. She was small, but her movements were precise, almost like a shadow slipping silently over rocks and through narrow paths. He adjusted his own gear and followed her, riding slowly along the canyon floor, keeping their horses quiet and close. Every step mattered. They knew the canyon could hide them, but it could just as easily reveal them if they were careless. For hours they moved in silence, only speaking when necessary. Nayeli pointed out places where they could hide if someone came by, led Eli along secret paths, and shared her knowledge of the terrain. "This way," she whispered, guiding him down a narrow side path. "The trees here are thick, and the rocks cover our tracks. We'll be able to watch them without being noticed." As they reached a vantage point overlooking a wide stretch of plain, Nayeli crouched low, her eyes scanning the movement below. In the distance, a small group of men appeared, their horses kicking up dust as they rode. They were armed, clearly organized and moving in the direction of her village. Nayeli's jaw tightened. "There they are," she said. "That's the group. I've been trying to learn their plans, but they've been careful. If we follow them, we might finally see where they're heading." Eli studied the men. They were rough-looking, but not yet aware of the danger waiting in the canyon. "We'll follow at a distance," he said. "Keep your head down and watch them. Don't do anything until you're ready." Nayeli nodded. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had been training for this moment, learning how to blend in, how to read movements, how to anticipate danger. And now, everything she had learned would be put to the test. They followed the men across the plain, careful to avoid open areas where they could be spotted. The sun climbed higher, and the air grew hotter, but neither of them slowed. Eli's knowledge of the land and Nayeli's familiarity with the soldiers' habits made them an effective team. They moved like shadows, unseen and unnoticed, every step bringing them closer to the truth. By midday, the group of men stopped near a small abandoned outpost. Nayeli crouched behind a cluster of rocks, her eyes narrowing as she watched them. They were discussing something in low voices, pointing toward maps and marking spots with sticks. Eli stayed silent, impressed by her focus. She leaned close and whispered, "They're planning a raid, probably within the next 2 days. If they succeed, my village will have no time to prepare. We have to act quickly." Eli nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We'll need a plan. We can't just rush in blindly. You said your village isn't trained for battle, right? We need to think smart." "Yes," Nayeli said, her voice firm. "We need to find a way to intercept them, delay them, and warn the others. We can't fight them head-on. Not yet. But we can outsmart them." Her eyes glimmered with determination, a spark that made Eli feel hopeful despite the danger. They spent the afternoon observing the men, learning their patterns, memorizing the route they would take, and noting the supplies they carried. Nayeli took careful notes in her mind, committing every detail to memory. She whispered quietly to Eli, explaining the weaknesses she had noticed, the slow points in their patrol, and the areas where they could set traps if needed. Eli listened closely, impressed by her intelligence and attention to detail.
"You're thinking ahead," he said. "That's exactly what we need."
"We'll be ready." As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they decided to make camp in a hidden grove, safe from view of anyone who might pass by. Nayeli gathered firewood while Eli prepared their horses. The day had been long and exhausting, but their minds were still sharp, planning every possible move and countermove. Around the fire that night, Nayeli spoke more openly. "I've never done anything like this before," she admitted. "I've always learned from my people, listened to the elders, stayed safe in the mountains. But now, I'm out here, pretending to be someone else, watching people who want to hurt my family."
It's scary, but I have to do it.
Eli nodded, understanding her fear. "Fear isn't weakness," he said. "It's a sign that you care. The people who don't feel fear usually don't understand what they're risking. You feel it because your actions matter, and that's what makes you strong." Nayeli looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "I've never met anyone like you," she said softly. "Someone who doesn't judge me for who I am or the risks I've taken. I feel like I can trust you."
You can, Eli said firmly. I'll watch your back, just like you're watching your people's.
That's all that matters. The night passed quietly, though neither of them slept deeply. Their minds were filled with plans, strategies, and the knowledge that the next day would be crucial. They would have to follow the men closer, get more information, and prepare for the raid that threatened Nayeli's village. At dawn, they were already moving again. The air was crisp and the rocks cold under their hands as they made their way to another vantage point. Nayeli's heart pounded as she observed the men below. Every decision, every movement could change the outcome. She signaled to Eli, and they adjusted their positions silently, inching closer without being detected. The group of men split into smaller parties, moving in different directions, testing the terrain. Nayeli's sharp eyes caught every detail, the slow ones, the distracted ones, the paths where they could be intercepted. "We have to be careful," she whispered. "If they notice us, it's over. But we can do this. I've seen their weaknesses." Eli nodded, feeling the tension and focus in her words. They followed the men across the plain, using every bit of cover the land provided. Nayeli moved like a shadow, silent and precise, while Eli guided their horses and scanned the horizon. The coordination between them grew natural, like a silent understanding formed over days of trust and shared purpose. By mid-morning, they had enough information to begin planning an interception. Nayeli crouched low behind a rocky ridge, pointing out the best route to approach the men without being seen. Eli listened carefully, nodding as he considered her ideas. We'll need to act at night, he said. That's when they'll be less alert, and we'll have the advantage of surprise. Yes, Naeli whispered. We can't fight them directly, but we can slow them down, confuse them, and give my village a chance to prepare. We can do this together. The rest of the day was spent preparing. They gathered supplies, mapped the terrain in their minds, and rested in the shade whenever possible. Every movement was calculated, every choice deliberate. They knew the danger, but they also knew that if they succeeded, lives would be saved. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Eli and Naeli sat quietly. Tomorrow will be the real test, Eli said. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now it's about timing, patience, and courage.
Naeli nodded, her eyes bright with determination. I won't fail, she said.
Not after all this. I have to protect my people, and I know I'm not alone anymore. Together, they watched the last light fade from the canyon, knowing that the next day would mark the beginning of a dangerous mission that could change everything. Every plan they had made, every secret they had uncovered, would be put to the ultimate test, and both of them understood that the choices they made would decide the fate of many lives. In the quiet of the canyon, with the stars beginning to shine, Eli and Naeli prepared themselves for what was to come. They had the knowledge, the courage, and the bond between them. And for the first time, hope felt stronger than fear. The first light of dawn crept over the canyon, painting the rocks with soft shades of orange and pink. Eli and Naeli had been awake for hours, moving carefully through the narrow paths and rocky ridges, making sure no one could see them. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust, and the canyon seemed alive with the quiet sound of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Every step mattered. One wrong move could reveal their position to the men they had been tracking for days. Naeli crouched low behind a boulder, her dark eyes scanning the valley below. The small group of men was moving in the direction of her village, their horses kicking up clouds of dust in the dry morning air. She counted them carefully, memorizing their positions and movements. There are 9 of them, she whispered to Eli. They're cautious, but moving too close together. If we act now, we can slow them down before they reach my village. Eli nodded, adjusting his saddle and checking his horse's footing. We'll need to be smart. We can't take them head on. They're armed and trained, but we can use the terrain to our advantage. I know a narrow pass up ahead. If we guide them through it, they won't be able to move quickly, and we can block their path. Naeli's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Every observation, every plan, every careful step had led to this.
I'm ready, she said softly. Let's do this carefully.
We can't make mistakes. They moved silently, staying in the shadows of the rocks and trees, inching closer to the pass that Eli had identified. The canyon walls were high and steep, making it impossible for anyone below to see them from a distance. Naeli's hands were steady, gripping her coat as if it were armor, while Eli's eyes scanned every movement of the men. They were close now, within a few hundred feet, and the tension was almost unbearable. As the group entered the narrow pass, Naeli signaled to Eli. Now, she whispered. Together they moved to a hidden spot where large boulders and fallen trees could create a barrier, slowing the men down. Eli pushed a few rocks into position, while Naeli watched, ready to act if anyone noticed them. The plan was simple: slow them down and confuse them, giving Naeli's village time to prepare. The first horse entered the narrow passage. Its rider glanced around, alert but unaware of the danger above. Then came the second, third, and fourth riders, They were moving too close together, just as Naeli had observed. A small rock slide guided by Eli sent a few stones tumbling down the cliffside. The horses stumbled slightly and the riders shouted in surprise, trying to regain control. Naeli held her breath, her mind focused on every detail. "Good," she whispered. "Keep them off balance. Don't let them regroup too quickly." She moved carefully, her small frame making her almost invisible among the rocks. She was a shadow above them, watching and guiding the operation with precision. The men tried to regroup, shouting instructions to each other, but the narrow pass made it difficult for them to move freely. Eli and Naeli pushed a few more rocks into position, creating small obstacles that slowed the group further. Horses stumbled over rocks, riders shouted in confusion, and the men realized they were being blocked. "They don't know what's happening," Naeli said quietly. "Keep them confused, but don't let them see us." Eli nodded, impressed by her control under pressure. She was calm, focused, and fearless, even in the face of danger. The leader of the group, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, dismounted and tried to organize his men. "Spread out," he shouted. "Keep moving. Don't let them block us." But the pass was narrow, and the rocks made it almost impossible for them to move quickly. Every step they took was carefully guided by Eli and Naeli from above. Eli leaned close to Naeli. "We need to think one step ahead. We can't just stop them here forever. We need a way to push them back without risking ourselves." Naeli nodded, her eyes scanning the remaining path. "There's a small side trail up ahead," she said. "If we block that too, they'll have to turn back. It's their only escape route, and it's narrow enough that they can't move quickly. That's where we'll stop them completely." They moved cautiously to the side trail, placing more rocks and fallen branches to block the path. The men below struggled to navigate the obstacles, growing frustrated and anxious. Their shouts echoed through the canyon, but Eli and Naeli remained unseen, silent observers controlling the flow of the situation. Finally, the group reached the end of the pass. There was no other way forward, and the obstacles had slowed them enough that retreat was their only option. Naeli felt a surge of relief, but she knew the danger was not over. The men could regroup and try to find another route, or worse, retaliate. Eli put a hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said. "They're stopped for now, and your village has time to prepare. That's what matters." Naeli nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "Your knowledge of the land, it saved us." They stayed in their hidden position, watching the men retreat. Naeli's mind raced, thinking of her village and the people who depended on her. She had delayed the threat, but she knew they would return, and next time, the stakes would be higher. "We need to get back," Eli said. "Your village needs to know what's coming. The faster we warn them, the better prepared they'll be." Naeli agreed. They moved carefully down the canyon, retracing their path while staying hidden from any wandering eyes. The ride was tense but quiet, their horses moving steadily through the rocky terrain. Every shadow could be a threat, but their focus never wavered. By the time they reached the edge of her village, the sun was high in the sky, casting bright light over the valley. Naeli rode slowly, taking in the familiar sight of her home. Families were starting their daily tasks, unaware of the danger that had almost reached them. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that the time for action had arrived. Eli followed her to the edge of the village, careful not to draw attention. "They'll need to prepare defenses," he said. "Warn everyone quietly and make sure no one panics. You've bought them time, but it's not over yet." Naeli nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and determination. I'll organize them, she said. They trust me, and I'll make sure they're ready.
Thank you, Eli. I couldn't have done this without you.
He smiled faintly. You did most of the work, he said. I just helped guide you. The courage was all yours. Together, they rode into the village. Nayeli ready to take command of the situation. She moved quickly, quietly gathering the elders and explaining the situation. Her calm, confident voice reassured them, and they listened closely, preparing for the potential attack. Every plan she had made over the past days was now put into action, and the village moved with purpose, guided by her knowledge and courage. As Eli watched from the edge of the village, he felt a deep sense of pride. Nayeli had faced danger directly, used her intelligence and courage, and protected her people without hesitation. The canyon that had been their battleground now felt like a symbol of what could be accomplished with determination, careful planning, and trust. The sun climbed higher, and the village buzzed with activity. Nayeli moved among the people, organizing watch points, preparing supplies, and ensuring everyone knew their role. She was small, but her presence commanded attention. Her bravery inspired confidence, and her quick thinking ensured the village was ready for whatever might come next. Eli stayed at the edge, watching her work, realizing that her courage and leadership would be remembered long after this day. He knew the danger was not over, but for now, the immediate threat had been delayed, and that was a victory in itself. As the day went on, Nayeli took a moment to rest. She looked at Eli and smiled, a small but genuine expression of gratitude and relief. We did it, she said softly. We saved them, at least for now. Eli nodded. Yes, for now. But remember, you're not alone. Whatever happens next, we face it together. The canyon behind them was silent, but the echoes of their bravery seemed to linger in the rocks. The obstacles they had set, the strategy they had executed, and the courage they had shown created a story that would be remembered, not just for the immediate victory, but for the strength it represented. Nayeli looked around her village, feeling a sense of pride and purpose. She knew the challenges ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that with courage, careful planning, and the support of those she trusted, she could face anything. And Eli, the cowboy who had become her ally, was proof that strength could be found in the most unexpected places. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the distant mountains, casting long golden shadows across the valley. The village, once quiet in the early morning, now buzzed with activity. Nayeli moved through the streets, her small frame carrying a confidence that belied her youth. Families worked together, reinforcing barricades at the edges of the village and preparing supplies for defense. The elders offered guidance, but it was Nayeli's voice that carried authority. Her courage, sharpened by the days of careful observation and planning, had inspired them all. Eli watched from the edge of the village, leaning against his horse. He had seen many battles in his life, both small and large, but nothing compared to this. Here was a young girl, disguised as a soldier, who had taken responsibility for an entire village. She had confronted danger, delayed a group of armed men, and now led her people with intelligence and courage. It was a kind of bravery he had rarely witnessed. Nayeli approached him finally, her face flushed with exertion but shining with determination. We've done what we can for now, she said softly. The rest is up to the village. They know what to do. Everyone has a role. I feel prepared for the first time. Eli nodded, admiration clear in his eyes. You've earned it, he said. You've faced danger head-on, and you've succeeded. Your people are safer because of you. That takes more courage than most can imagine. Nayeli glanced toward the mountains in the distance, the path the men had taken still visible through the heat haze of the afternoon. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but there was no fear in it, only a realistic awareness of the danger that lingered beyond the horizon. "They might," Eli admitted, "but if they do, they'll be facing a village ready for them. And they'll have to get through you first." He smiled faintly. "And you're not alone this time. They won't catch anyone off guard." Nayeli smiled back, a small but genuine expression that carried relief and pride. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of her success. She had acted as a protector, a leader, and a strategist, and it had all worked. Her village was safe, for now. As the late afternoon shadows stretched across the village, families began to gather near the center of the town. The elders called for a meeting, and Nayeli stepped forward to speak. Her voice was calm, clear, and full of authority. "We have delayed the threat," she said, "and we have prepared ourselves. But we must stay alert. We cannot assume danger will not return. Each of us has a role, and each of us must be ready. Together, we are strong. Together, we will protect our homes and families." Her words resonated with the villagers. Children who had been frightened began to feel a sense of security. Adults who had worried for their family's safety now felt the confidence that came from being prepared. Nayeli had not only delayed the attack, but had given them the tools to face whatever might come next. Eli stood to the side, watching as her presence inspired the village. He thought about the journey that had led them here, from the first moment he had encountered her hiding in the canyon to the careful tracking of the group of men and the clever interception in the narrow pass. Each step had tested them, but they had succeeded. Nayeli had proven herself in ways he had never imagined. As the sun dipped lower, casting the village in a warm golden light, Ellie and Nayeli walked to the edge of the settlement. "It's strange," Nayeli said quietly, "how different it feels to be home after all that. The canyon feels far away now, but I can still remember every rock, every shadow, every moment of fear and hope." "You've changed," Eli said, "and so has the village. You brought courage when they needed it most. That's something no one will forget." Nayeli looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You guided me, protected me, and helped me think clearly when I was scared. I won't forget that." Eli smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me. You did the hard part. You faced danger, made the decisions, and kept your people safe. I just helped you along the way." They rode together slowly along the edge of the village, checking the perimeter and making sure no one was overlooked. The sun continued to sink behind the mountains, painting the sky with hues of pink and purple. The air was calm, and for the first time since their journey began, Nayeli felt a sense of peace. As they paused near a rocky ridge overlooking the village, Nayeli dismounted and looked at Eli. "Will you stay?" she asked softly. "Even for a little while? The village could use someone like you, someone who understands the land and can help protect it." Eli shook his head gently, though a smile lingered on his lips. "I can't stay long," he said. "The plains call me, and there are always other places where I'm needed. But I'll be around if you need me. And I'll always remember this place and the courage I've seen here." Nayeli nodded, understanding. She had grown used to the idea that Eli was a wanderer, someone who moved from place to place, but she also knew that his presence had made a difference, and the memory of his guidance would stay with her forever. "Promise me you'll stay safe," she said, "and promise me you won't forget what we accomplished here." Eli looked at her with a quiet seriousness. "I promise," he said, "and I won't forget. You've taught me something too, about courage, about leadership, about never giving up. even when the odds are against you. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the village below. The people were moving with purpose, preparing for whatever might come next, guided by the lessons Nayeli had taught them. The sun finally disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the sky a deep shade of violet, dotted with the first stars of evening. "I suppose this is goodbye," Nayeli said softly, though there was no sadness in her voice, only acceptance. "Not forever," Eli replied. "Just for now. The world is bigger than this canyon, bigger than this village. But we'll meet again someday, I'm sure of it." Nayeli nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Then I'll look forward to that day. And until then, I'll keep doing what I must. My people need me, and I will protect them." Eli placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you'll do it well," he said. "I have no doubt. You've already proven it." As the night settled over the valley, they prepared to part ways. Nayeli returned to the village to ensure the preparations were complete, while Eli mounted his horse, ready to ride back into the plains. He looked back one last time, seeing her standing tall among her people, a figure of courage and determination that would inspire the village for years to come. The journey they had shared had been dangerous and uncertain, but it had also been a journey of trust, courage, and growth. Nayeli had stepped into a role that required wisdom beyond her years, and Eli had been there to guide and support her. Together, they had faced fear and uncertainty, and together they had ensured the safety of many lives. As Eli rode away, the wind carrying dust and the scent of the sagebrush, he felt a sense of satisfaction and pride. He had witnessed something extraordinary. A young girl who defied expectations, who risked everything for her people, and who had done so with intelligence, bravery, and unwavering determination. Nayeli, meanwhile, returned to her people, ensuring that every detail of their defenses was in place. She moved among them with quiet confidence, giving instructions, offering reassurance, and instilling courage. The lessons she had learned during the days of tracking the men and planning the interception were now being put into practice. That night, as the village settled under the protective shadows of the mountains, Nayeli finally allowed herself a moment of rest. She sat quietly, looking at the stars above, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. The canyon, the dangers, the strategies, all of it had led her here. She felt a quiet pride in herself, in what she had accomplished, and in the bond she had formed with Eli. Even though the threat was not entirely gone, Nayeli knew she had done everything she could. She had delayed the attackers, protected her village, and prepared her people. And she had learned that courage was not about the absence of fear, but about facing it with intelligence, determination, and heart.